Do you have your dream job right now? Have you arrived? Yeah, me neither. Full disclosure, I'm still in the middle of my career, and Plan A has failed. Have you ever been in a position to really give advice to friends on their career path, and you feel inadequate and not that equipped to do so? And really, the tables should be turned, and you should be approaching your friend to really grab that advice from them. So I've been thinking about this aspect of pursuing a career and preparing for the career and spending our college and postgraduate kind of setting that trajectory in order to arrive at that dream job. But what happens when it self implodes and you find yourself kind of in midlife and you have to revert to plan B and you have to start over and start a different career path? If that is not the definition and also an application of when life is messy, I do not have a clue what is. As always, I want to speak in not generic terms, but I want to give you specific examples from my life, so that you can be encouraged and you can be really reminded that, hey, I'm not the only one. Other people struggle too. Other people have real issues, and their Instagram life is not real. They just post the good things. All right, so here we go. Real life struggles with employment and professional goals, professional careers. Here we go. All right, so in my case, after high school, I got a good sense of a trajectory that I wanted to go, and therefore I pursued 4 years in undergrad, met that goal, an additional 4 years and post-grad, achieved that, got a master's degree in my field, and then I got married. And certain jobs weren't immediately opened. I had already gotten an internship in my field, but it was only 1 year long, which I knew. However, still halfway through, I was told I will let you know by my advisors that I should seek employment elsewhere post the allotted time for my internship. Now, that's not to show any or throw any shade on them. However, it's kind of like a deer in headlight moment. It's like, well, what do I do next? What is my plan, my course of action? And when you're running against the clock and you have extended family kind of looking to you, like, hey, when are you going to get your act together? And when are you going to get your life together? You're not responsible for yourself anymore in your college dorm room. You've got a family to provide for, and you've got those loved ones to really consider as well. So What's your plan? Of course, they more often than not lovingly approach you in this manner. However, it is still very uncomfortable, and quite frankly, it rubs you raw and rubs you the wrong way. And of course, the emotions, the frustrations, the instability, the pressure, all those things start to well up, and it really pushes you in you have to change your mentality from being proactive to reactive in finding employment. So in my case, my college and postgraduate career and my field of study is in theological studies, and as well as that internship that I spoke of. And this happened to me, where certain jobs did not open at the perfect time in which I would have liked them to. And so a few things ended up happening. I went through a list of really odd jobs that I hated, but I had to put bread on the table and do my part. So here we go. I spent a little bit of time as a car salesman, as crazy as that sounds. And I spent a little bit of time in the lawn care business. I spent a little bit of time in the restaurant business, food industry business. With a master's degree in theological studies. Keep that in mind. Finally, when a position comes up, 2 weeks later, COVID happens. Yay. Now, that's kind of for the purposes of this conversation, kind of a secondary matter. But yet, it was a part-time position, which required me to yet get a secondary job, which is very common. Bivocational is a very common thing. And I'm sure that a great deal of you can relate to that, having multiple jobs just to, live comfortably, live a comfortable lifestyle. However, time is precious to us. We only have so much of it. And so when we are forced to split it in half, in terms of vocationally, that's very burdensome and very stressful. So you go a couple of years, in my case, about 3 years, doing 2 jobs, bivocational. One job was in my career path, and the other was not. It was just retail. And the ironic thing is I spent the majority of my time in the job that I didn't really like. All right, so fast forward, the goal. What is the goal here? The goal is to have one source of income that is adequate and in the field in which you have prepared yourself for. So after 3 years, in my specific case, I finally achieved that goal. And that was blissful, it was encouraging. All is well with the world. And 2 years down the road, things start to shift again. And what happens when your employer, your supervisors, really approach you and basically with little to no communication at all. Um, Kindly and respectfully, but still, they call for your resignation. What then? And a logical and a normal reaction is to kind of get some clarification on whether it be the actual job description. Uh, did I let a certain amount of things fall through the cracks? Um, you want to have some sort of a conversation, even though it's not going to change the powers that be and their minds. But what happens when they are very, very resistant and very, very hesitant and very, very politically minded in terms of giving you a roundabout answer and not a direct answer? That is extremely, extremely frustrating. Extremely frustrating. And you want to maintain that personal integrity and the level of respect as you have certain expectations for your own lifestyle, as in my case. I'm not going to lash out and start cursing and yelling and all this kind of stuff. That's not professional, as well as that's just not the way it's done. And that's not my personal character. So you still want to maintain that level of integrity. But inside, you're just exploding. You're just raw. So where do you go from there? Well, you are forced to start over. The career in which you have prepared and given 10 years of your life, roughly 10 years, in college and internships and postgraduate degrees, all for one field of study. And that atomic bomb just destroys it. I think you're sort of catching my drift here, and you can feel the tension here and the impasse, the proverbial fork in the road, and you're forced to divert. You're still young. You still have half of your professional career ahead of you. And yet you have this life situation, this dilemma, this major setback. Where do you go? What do you do? What's your strategy? How do you recover? All right, well, in my case, I transitioned from pastoral ministry to the education field. Now, the common denominator there is that it's a small Christian private school, so there are some crossovers, some just the same kind of worldview, approach to education, approach to life, etc., that was highly desirable on their part, and they saw qualities in me, and so it kind of made sense. So virtually 6 months go by in order to achieve that reset, though. Okay, you've gone 5 steps back and 3 steps forward, so you're starting to make some forward progress. And everything is new. In my case, with the education field, August hits, well, really, the last week of July. With, if you're a teacher, you know, pre-planning, it's a real thing. But August hits, you've got new students, new coworkers, new supervisors, names, faces, routines, rhythm of life, everything, all the things are new. Not to mention the systems in which you have to familiarize yourself with, gradebooks, just different email settings, and the list goes on. I don't want to bore you with those specific details, but you kind of catch the drift. And then certain expectations are set, and I'm a detailed person, so I like to almost to a certain militaristic type of detail. Like, you give me a list, I will execute that list to a T. It's the OCD part in me, really, which serves me well in this realm. However, when you get hired on in a position and you, throughout the interview process and then throughout the onboarding process, you ask specific questions and you get generic answers to the effect of, oh, you have certain liberties and you have the freedom and the flexibility to kind of make it your own, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that's great. And so from my perspective, I will start the trial and error process and the experimentation process in this new environment. So you try something and it may work, it may not work. But if it doesn't work, you're going to try something else and something else until you repeat that process until you perfect it to a certain degree. A few weeks to 6 weeks go by, you may be called in the office. And really, you are then confronted in a very, maybe a semi-aggressive, very confrontational type of way. And the expectations are now, why aren't you doing these specific things? That's a very interesting question, considering that 6 weeks back, I asked specific questions and you gave me generic directions, generic answers. So I started generating generic trial by fire, trial and error solutions. So here you are, not even 6 months into a new job and a new career path. Everything is new. You're trying to make the best of a plan B situation, and you're already right out of the gate receiving friendly fire of all things. Now, it's one thing to have a learning curve, and I realize that's a legitimate thing. However, please set legitimate and accurate expectations, especially when you know who you hired, you know their background, and you know they don't have a specific applicable degree in that specific field, and you know there's going to be some on-job training. Please, if you're an employer, extend some grace, extend a little bit of mercy, and a lot of understanding, and a lot of coaching. This is not one of those situations where you just stick them in a office or a classroom or whatever the setting is and just hope that they will be a mini me or a mini you, and they will kind of catch on. It's not that that person, that employee, is incompetent. It is that they need specific guidance and specific directions in order to be successful and successfully achieve their goals and their job descriptions. All right, so that is going to really wrap up this segment here. And I know there's a lot more to this, but again, I just want to really share from my personal experience, because who knows how you can relate, and maybe you have either gone through this situation before and you're glad you're not in it anymore, or maybe you're right in the middle of it like me and you're just trying to figure it out as you go. And at the same time, you have other people who may be in just a little bit different situation and a little bit worse off than you, and that they are also coming to ask you advice, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, I am in no way qualified or in no position to do so, but hey, I'll give it my best shot. All right, so when life is messy has a huge component to our employment, our job, and how that in so many different ways, especially for guys, really takes on our identity. Like when you ask someone how you're doing, typically for a guy, it's going to be directly related to their occupation, their job. And so they find that sense of purpose, that sense of joy, that sense of well-being, all wrapped into one with that employment source. And so when that is abruptly taken away from you, like just the proverbial, the carpet is just ripped out from under you and you fall straight on your butt. Yes, learning to get back up again is a legitimate learned skill, and it builds resilience, it builds character, but it is painful. So I just want to encourage you that you are not the only one who is in the middle of a storm right now. I'm right there with you. And hopefully, if this really spoke to you in a unique time in your life, and hopefully breathed some empathy and some hope and some encouragement for you today, man, I would just make sure that you would like and subscribe down below, and make sure that you turn on those notification icons so that when more content is produced and I put it out there, that you are sure to be one of the first ones to catch it.